Hi everyone, welcome to the latest intervention video. This one is on domestic division of labour, and we are going to also look briefly at analysis skills. So let's get started. So we're going to start at the beginning of what we've learned in terms of domestic division of labour. And that idea comes from Talcott Parsons. So this is 1950s, 1960s America, very traditionalist, some would argue outdated view. So Parsons basically said that it was clear that there should be a division in the labour of what is done within the house because there is a biological difference between men and women, and that they are predisposed. You are born to do a certain role. So men are born because of their physical and mental abilities compared to women, to become the breadwinner and to earn the money and do all of the paid employment. Whereas women are more naturally, biologically predisposed to be the caregiver. They are kinder, they are more emotional, they actually have the child, so they have that connection. So their role should be to continue that throughout. So it's based on biology, obviously. Um, Elizabeth Bott is also a functionalist, operating around about the same time, so 1950s through 1960s. But Bott has a slightly different view and maybe a more developed view, believe that there are, based on biological differences, but there are two different types of conjugal roles, though: the segregated and joint conjugal roles. So there are still distinct segregated conjugal roles to do with who does the paid employment, so the man still going to work, and who does the unpaid work at home, being the house, looking after the house and being the caregiver for children. However, but also believe that there were joint conjugal roles, things that were done together. So there was an increase in leisure time and holiday and time together as a family being spent. So not just the biological differences that Parsons talks about, but actually some more joint conjugal roles. So we can see a little bit of a development of a movement towards equality, I suppose, but there is still that distinct difference. It's not really until the 1970s where we start seeing people coming out with ideas that there is more equality. And Young and Wilmot came up with the idea of symmetrical family. So they carried out some research in the East End of London where they questioned around about 10,000 households. Bit of a link here to research methods, everyone. They used a sampling frame from an electoral register. So they went and got their sample frame from that. And anyway, what they believed was their research showed that there had been an increase in a symmetrical family. More men were doing more around the house. They were sharing more of the responsibilities around the house. Could argue this links nicely in with the policies of the late 1960s, early 1970s, which allowed women to go into more employment, and also encourage women to go into more employment through things such as the Equal Pay Act. You could also put forward an argument that there's a march of progress here. So this links with liberal feminism, that women are being kind of socialized to realize that they are more equal, and men are as well, so that there's more acceptance, an idea that women should be doing more paid work and maybe less housework, and men should be doing more. Gershony found in his research that there had been a much of progress, and found that women who were working full time did less housework. Granted, this is only 10% less, so the drop of about 83 to 73%. But Gershony believed that this was enough of a change and a shift to say that there was some sort of lagged adaptation, that actually it was happening, but it was just maybe it's not happening at the speed in which women were gaining employment, that men weren't doing as much at home at the same speed as women were getting paid employment, but there was definitely a march of progress. It's not perfect, though. And Silver and Shaw believe that one of the things surrounding this was that maybe the commercialization of housework, particularly from the 1970s onwards, where we were having more products produced to help do work. So this might actually equate for why women were doing less, because it wasn't as physically taxing, but also to put forward the argument that perhaps men are doing more because it's a bit easier. So, the idea of doing laundry, for example, if you're doing that by hand, that could take, maybe an hour or several hours of scrubbing and drying and rinsing. But if you've got a machine that you just bang it into, stick a bit of soap powder in there and press a button and away it goes. One, that means that women will be doing less because it doesn't take as long. But two, maybe men would be encouraged more to do housework, etc. Then there's also this idea that we have a new breed of super dads, new dads, where particularly within the 1990s and the 2000s, we've got more dads who are taking on that responsibility of looking after children and spending more time, not just in leisure time with their children, but actually working with their children, more stay-at-home fathers, helped by the maternity paternity acts coming in. But we've got this idea of like new super dads coming in. Major issue I think here is that we've never really called them super moms, because it's like an expectation maybe that mothers are supposed to do this, and if dads do it, then they are going above and beyond. From my personal point of view, I think super dads and new dads shouldn't exist. It's just dads, and there should be a responsibility to do that. But yeah, there's that idea there. So all of these things that you see on the screen now are the idea that things are improving. However, there are some arguments to criticize these ideas and also to suggest that things aren't improving. Anne Oakley directly criticises Young and Wilmot's study. She looks at their study and thinks, right, hold on, this is a load of rubbish. And this idea that there's a modern man and there's more symmetry in the family, I believe that's a load of rubbish. She goes out and carries out her own research, interviewing and speaking to housewives in 40 households. And what she found was that these findings of Young and Wilmot were significantly exaggerated in her eyes. And actually, what she found is that men are barely doing any more. And you can't really equate banging some washing into a washing machine and pressing a button as equality in terms of the household, because these women are still doing all of the child care. They're still doing all of the cooking, the other manual cleaning. They were still doing all of that. We can criticize Anne Oakley, obviously, because she's only interviewed 40 housewives. So the fact that one, there's only 40 compared to 10,000. So is her research actually representative? She's only interviewed housewives as well. So maybe that there's a little bit of bias there, and the wording of the questions, etc. So we could criticize Anne Oakley's criticism. There are some, however, who put forward the idea, Dunscombe and Marsden and people like that, that actually since women have gone into work, because of things such as the Equal Pay Act and the Sex Discrimination Act, this hasn't actually created symmetry. It's just created even more work for women. So they're just having, as well as doing the unpaid housework at home, they are also now doing paid housework. And they're not doing less. They've just got less time to do it all. And this has created a dual burden. So they're doing all of the paid housework and all of the unpaid housework, and the paid work. If you take into consideration the childcare side of things and the emotional side of things, some believe that this is actually a triple shift: paid employment, unpaid employment, and then the emotional care in which a woman has to be responsible for. Feminist Dunn believes that actually all of this stuff is just a load of rubbish, because the only true symmetrical families we can have are where they are same sex, because there will always be a biological difference between what men think they should be doing and what women think they should be doing or are doing. And the only place we will ever truly find symmetrical families is where they are same sex, because there is not that division, either in the head or biological. Even if men are doing more, what Dunn would argue is that in the back of their head, they're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this, women should be doing this. There is no hierarchical, biological, patriarchal control in a same-sex marriage or a same-sex relationship. And that's the only true symmetrical way that we can have it. So there's a bit of domestic division of labour in terms of the improvements that we're having, and then the criticise that we've got there. Final thing that we're going to look at in domestic division of labour is the idea of power and decision making. So Edgar believes that tasks might be becoming more equal. However, when it comes to decision making, men still have the control, and there's a hierarchy of decisions. And Edgar believes there was 3 sets of decisions made. So the high stakes decisions, such as where people live, what kind of car people buy, the things that cost a lot of money and have a major impact on the family, Edgar believes that men were still by far making that decision. Then there were some kind of joint decisions in the middle, and these would be things that maybe would cost a lot of money but are more family orientated, such as where they go on holiday, where children go to school, where women are able to have more of a say and an input. And then at the bottom of the hierarchy was where women would predominantly make most of the decisions, things such as what clothes children are going to wear, what they were going to have for tea, what they would buy when they would go shopping, things like that. Edgar believes that maybe there's two reasons for this. One, because it is seen as a biological, traditional kind of decisions that are made by a woman. They should be deciding what's for food, for tea, because that's their job as a housewife. But there's the other one as well, the fact that it's low stakes, low impact, and it doesn't really matter who makes that decision, and that men are quite happy for women just to get on with that. The other side of things that we want to look at as well with domestic violence. So some people, particularly Dorbash in their study that they carried out to do with women who were victims of domestic violence, found that as men were losing their traditional role, their traditional power, their traditional position in the family, you could say becoming emasculated and a loss of masculinity, they believed that men were trying to find control in other areas of their life. So they couldn't control a woman's finances, for instance, because they were going to work and they were earning their own money. So they were looking for other ways to control it. And what they found was this was a reason why a lot of these women in this refuge in Scotland that Dorbash were looking at, they were there because it was seen as though they were questioning the masculinity and the rule of their husband. And when they were questioning why they should do something, or why should I do this, and why can't I do this, this is where domestic violence started to really develop and build. So as men are losing their power and women are no longer doing their traditional role, perhaps this is another way for men to actually gain some sort of masculine control back. 1/6 of all violent crime that happened in this country is domestic violence. So we can see that as women are increasing in their equality, there's also an increase in domestic violence. And I think there's evidence out there to suggest that they could go hand in hand in the correlation between the two. We're going to leave domestic division of labour now, and we're just going to very quickly think about analysis within our exam questions. There's some clear things that I think you should do for analysis to help you gain those marks. Think about impact. Think about questions such as, what does this show? What does this mean? Is it positive? Is it a negative? Make sure you clearly link it back to the question. How does the AO1 and the AO2 that you've selected as evidence to answer a question, how does it answer the question? Is it a strong way of answering the question? Is it a weak way? Can we question it in some way? And also, can you bring in some theory to strengthen your argument? So, do postmodernists agree with what you've just said? Do functionalists agree with what you said? How can you strengthen your idea? So, there's the three key things that you need to think about with analysis. Talk about what the impact of what you've just said is. Make sure you link it back to the question, and if you can, bring in some theory. And also, you can analyze throughout the essay. So, can you link it back to previous points? So, can you say, this shows that it's actually a stronger argument than a previous paragraph? Or can you say that it's weaker than something else? So, analysis can happen throughout the essay. In terms of your tasks for this week, if you are doing intervention, here are your 3 tasks on the screen. If you are grade boosters, again, here are your 3 tasks on the screen. And if you are high achievers, here are your tasks. Remember, everyone, there's nothing to stop you from going on to the next level or a previous level and doing more than you need to. There's nothing to stop you from doing that, but please make sure that you do all of the tasks depending on which group you are in. Have fun, look after each other, take care, bye.